Very, very, very extraordinary time. I can't really think of anything quite like it. Certainly not in the modern era. And certainly not in terms of something positive. You think of the modern era, you can think of a whole lot of negative things. That incidentally is not modernity's fault. It's pre-modernity getting its hands on modern technology by and large. But most people are hard-pressed to think of something really positive about the modern world, mostly because post-modernity itself has spent so much time trashing the modern world. But the fact of the matter is, this is the first time in history where we're having a stage transformation that's also a major tier transformation, a major leap in very profound ways. We've had some of these before, but never one that empirical evidence suggests could be as profound as it's going to be. And that transformation has already occurred in certain profound ways in you. And that's why you're here. And that transformation is some aspect, some center of gravity, at least cognitively, has moved into integrative or integral vision, logic, centauric, higher mind, turquoise, second tier, being needs. And this is why you find what we're doing interesting. This is why you come together and feel comfortable with each other. And that's a really, isn't that one of the most extraordinary things you find when you get into a gathering like this, is you come for the teachers and you find each other. And that's almost more interesting than, the other stuff that the trappings and everything. It's actually being able to come out of the closet integrally. And it's just unheard of, really. And so people tend to find that the first couple of days into a 5-day workshop with other integral people, there's a certain deep kind of relaxation that starts to occur in their awareness. And that deep relaxation is not having to go out into a world that is hostile to what you're doing. And the hostility is hard to bear because it's hostility when you're holding a higher good. And to be not seen for that, and in a sense punished for it, is a sort of a double punishment. It's really brutal. And if you really kind of feel that, you shouldn't feel that, well, now I'm kind of getting integral in my life and I should feel better. In many ways you get integral in your life and you feel like hell. And it's like, thanks a lot, Wilbur. I was doing just fine. But you don't have any choice, because one of the things that is so extraordinary about at least this one component of integral is that it does indeed appear to be a stage of development. And that's very, very important. If we look at stages, and as you know, different models have different stages, but if we put all of them together, including some of the transpersonal stages, it appears that there's pretty clearly around a dozen major stages. Spiral dynamics has 8, for example. There are at least 4 beyond that. But if you put 4 with the spiral dynamics, you get a general idea. Jane Loevinger has 8 as well. And again, Susanka Greuter has already added 2 and possibly 3 stages to Jane Loevinger's model based on empirical research. So those are already there. These are models based not on, this is how we think the world should go, but this is based on empirical research. And even developmental models like Piaget, that is, the whipping boy of postmodernism, the actual stages that he outlined, not his explanation of what they were and why they developed. That was sort of tinged in biology, and it doesn't really work very well. But the simple description of the stages, 6 stages of sensory motor intelligence, for example, and the substages of pre-operational cognition, and then concrete operational cognition, and then into formal operational cognition. That model has been tested on Aboriginal rainforest tribes. It's been tested on the, and I use Aboriginal in the broad sense of the original inhabitants of a land, the Aborigines in Australia. It's been tested when you have something, no exceptions to a scheme. When you find something that works on everything from kids in New Jersey to tribes in the rainforest, something is going on there. Now, these are, Lawrence Kohlberg, the other favorite whipping boy, unfortunately his model's been tested in over 30 cultures. No exceptions to those stages. Now, it doesn't mean it covers all of morals, but if for a specific type of moral response, his model is very sound. Now, what this means is all of the people working with these developmental models have come to a conclusion that there's the next stage that's about to emerge is something that many of them actually call integral, and have been doing so for 30 or 40 years, way before it sort of started to catch on. And they called it that because the data indicated that where all the previous stages tended to be at variance with each other. So that if you have a particular value structure that's traditional, then you disagree with modern values, and you disagree with postmodern values, and you disagree with tribal values, and you think that only traditional fundamentalist values are right and everybody else is going to burn in hell. And so that tends to be the structure of so many of these stages. But when you get to integral, in any of these models, including Piaget, Piaget started adding a systemic integral stage of cognition. Gene Gebser, many of you know, sort of a pioneer, went from archaic to magic to mythic to rational to pluralistic to integral, or integral aperspectival. Jane Lovinger called her two highest stages autonomous and integrated. And the reason is at these integral or integrated stages, unlike all the previous stages, the integrated stage finds room for all of the previous values. It finds all of them to be important and starts incorporating them in a transparent, conscious way. So it's the first structure that truly is inclusive. And that's extraordinary, because if that is a stage of development, then we are working with a particular framework that a large component of it, every human being on the planet is destined to go through this because it's a stage. So we're not using a model that's sort of like Derrida's deconstruction. You either like it or you don't like it. In people that go through the green or postmodern or relativistic stage, where most of Derrida's work comes from, when you get to that stage, you might find his work attractive. If you're not at that stage, you won't. But if you're at that stage and you're smart, you also won't. But you might. And so if you're there, you can really get into it, and that's okay. There's some very, very positive things about it, and I've actually incorporated quite a bit of his work. But you don't have to go through a Derrida stage, because it's just not there. It may or may not happen. But an integral orientation is a necessary stage. People will be going through that exactly like they have to go through the traditional stage. They have to go through modern stage. By they, it means all of us. We have to go through the modern stage, we have to go through a postmodern stage, and we have to go through an integral stage. And that's where the action is right now. And so if you are working on a particular discipline, if you're working on medicine or law or art or history, and you want to have the approach to that discipline that takes the most number of other approaches into account, that includes the most number of other truths than any alternative approaches. If you want to take the approach that has the most amount of truth and goodness and beauty, and if you want to be more successful, you're going to want to choose the highest level of consciousness that you can, yourself and body, in order to approach a particular dilemma. Because the higher the level you go, the more perspectives you take into account, the more likely you are to find an efficient, effective solution to the world's problems. And one thing is sure, you don't want to just stay at a traditional level and say, I know how to solve the world's problems. Everybody's going to adopt traditional values. Everybody will believe in, fundamentalist version of the Bible. And the world's problems will be solved. Or I have a modernist solution, and everybody can adopt modernist values. That just doesn't work. Not now. And so we're here to explore what does it mean to attempt two things. One, in our own awareness, find those aspects of ourselves that are reaching into integral. And you wouldn't be here if you weren't already doing that. Now that really is the test. And y'all passed. And the second part is then we're giving you some practices and orientations that will help you continue to feel into your awareness and spot that aspect that's integral, because it's there. And then to strengthen that muscle, if you will. And of course we have things like integral life practice as a actual personal practice you can do, and we have an integral life starter kit and so on that some people find helpful if that's one of the ways you want to do it. And it's strengthening that integral muscle in your own psyche. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And so that's one of the things that we want to do here. And the second is, that's sort of interior, if you will. And the second is now, how does it actually apply in the, quote, I was going to say the real world, but how does it apply in the exterior world? And those two things are what we want to try to give some sense about what's going on. And hopefully that is starting to happen. And we give a little bit more emphasis at the beginning on the interior, because it's something that you just don't have permission from the culture at large to do. And as a matter of fact, you have a whole lot of prohibitions. And y'all know what it's like. You know how you're treated when you start talking integral, and your friend's eyes just kind of glaze over, And especially if you're like, well, I've found this new author I really like, and let me know. And the next time, they're always running because you have like these 5 books that are about this thick, and you go, here, just read these. And you'll be great. You'll love it. You can get away from that. It's fantastic.